July 2025. Trump announced a ballroom at the White House. $250 million, then the price jumped to $300 million. The cost keeps rising. Trump said he would pay for it privately. Private donors, no taxpayer money. That was the promise. But then something happened that reveals everything you need to know about Trump's priorities. The East Wing of the White House, the historic East Wing built in 1902, got demolished. Not renovated, demolished, completely torn down, construction equipment smashing into windows, bulldozers tearing apart the facade. Photos went viral. Why? Because Trump wanted to build a ballroom, and to do it, he had to destroy a historic part of the White House that belonged to the American people. He didn't ask Congress. He didn't go through proper approval. He just did it, while America was in a government shutdown. American soldiers weren't getting paid. Federal workers were going without income. The government was shut down because Congress couldn't agree on a budget. And Trump was demolishing a historic building to build himself a ballroom. What was lost? The East Wing wasn't just some random building. It was designed by McKim, Mead & White, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in American history. The same firm that designed the Brooklyn Museum, Columbia University's campus, and Penn Station. This was serious architecture, built to last generations. Inside that East Wing were offices and meeting rooms that had witnessed more than a century of American history. Presidents had walked those halls. Historic decisions had been made in those rooms. And Trump looked at all of that history and said, I need the space for my ballroom. The demolition was rushed. Preservationists didn't have time to document everything. Architectural historians didn't get a chance to catalog what was being lost. It was just gone, bulldozed into rubble, hauled away like trash. A piece of American history erased so Trump could build something bigger and showier. The architect who said no Trump hired James McCreary to design this ballroom. McCreary is a classical architect who understands proportion and balance. And McCreary had a problem with Trump's plans. He said, no, this is wrong. A ballroom shouldn't be bigger than the White House itself. That violates basic architectural principles. An addition should be subordinate to the main building, not bigger and more ornate. That's just good design, but Trump didn't want to hear that. Trump wanted bigger. The ballroom was supposed to hold 650 people, then 900 people, then 999 people, 1,000 people in one room. That's how big Trump wanted it. And when McCreary said, no, this violates architectural principles, Trump got rid of him, just like that. McCreary, who was doing his job by counseling restraint and good design, got replaced. Trump couldn't tolerate someone telling him no. Now it's Shalom Baranes, an architect apparently more willing to go along with Trump's gigantic vision. That's Trump's pattern. When people resist him, when people try to set boundaries, he gets rid of them. Professional expertise doesn't matter if it conflicts with what he wants. The only thing that matters is whether you'll give Trump what he wants. The corporate donors buying access. But here's where it gets really dark. Here's where the corruption becomes crystal clear. Trump said this would be privately funded. But who are these donors? Amazon, Apple, Meta, Comcast, Booz Allen Hamilton, Caterpillar, Coinbase, Hard Rock International. These aren't companies donating out of goodness. These are corporations that have business with the federal government. They need permits. They need favorable regulatory treatment. They need contracts. And now they're paying for a ballroom. Not because they love architecture, but because they want access. They want invitations to fancy parties. They want to sit next to Trump and his cabinet members and discuss their business interests in private settings where nobody's watching. That's corruption. That's using the presidency as a personal business opportunity. Amazon needs favorable treatment on antitrust issues. A $50 million donation buys them a seat at the table. Apple needs help with trade policy regarding China. They need tariff relief. A donation gets them access to decision makers. Meta is fighting battles on privacy regulations, antitrust concerns, content moderation. They need friends in Washington. The ballroom is how they buy those friendships. Comcast wants merger approvals, favorable FCC decisions. They're in a highly regulated industry. Access to power is worth millions. And it goes on for every donor. Each company has business interests that depend on federal decisions. They're all writing checks to get into Trump's ballroom, to have quiet conversations with decision makers while champagne is poured and deals are made. The donor wall. Here's the crazy part. Trump floated the idea of engraving donor names inside the ballroom, like a museum donor wall. Thank you, Amazon, for $50 million. Thank you, Apple, for $40 million. The ballroom becomes a monument to corporate influence, a permanent reminder of who paid to play. This isn't subtle corruption. This is Trump literally putting corporate names on the walls of a federal building in exchange for money. It's corruption carved in marble. What Americans are getting, but what are the American people getting out of watching their White House be reshaped into a luxury venue for billionaires, Meanwhile, food prices are up, meat costs are through the roof, energy bills are skyrocketing, medical expenses are overwhelming families, and Trump's building a ballroom for 1,000 people to attend fancy parties. Let me tell you what's happening in real America. In Ohio, a factory worker named Jim had to cut his family's grocery budget by 30%. They're eating less meat. His kids stopped asking for snacks because money is tight. Jim voted for Trump because Trump promised to fight for working people. Now he's watching Trump build a $300 million ballroom. In Pennsylvania, a single mother working 2 jobs had to choose between paying her electric bill and buying her daughter's asthma medication. She chose the medication. Now she's behind on utilities, scared they'll shut off her power. But Trump needs a ballroom that seats 1,000 people. In Michigan, a veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan can't afford dental work. He needs a root canal but doesn't have insurance. He's living with constant pain, taking over-the-counter painkillers. Meanwhile, Trump's ballroom will have crystal chandeliers and imported marble floors. These are real people. These are Trump's supporters, many of them. They believed him when he said he'd fight for them. They believed him when he said he understood their struggles. And what did they get? A president building a palace for billionaires while they suffer. In the betrayal, Trump was supposed to be the champion of working people. He was supposed to fight for the forgotten, people in coal mines, truck drivers, factory workers. That was his whole pitch. He was going to stand up for regular Americans against the elites. But what is he doing? He's becoming the elite. He's building a ballroom for billionaires. He's taking money from corporations. He's creating an exclusive club where only the richest can go. He's literally becoming the exact thing he said he was fighting against. And his supporters, the people who believed him, who voted for him, they're not even being invited. A ballroom that seats 1,000 people is not for regular Americans. It's not for rallies. It's not for town halls. It's for state dinners and fancy events for the wealthy elite. Trump has basically said to his supporters, "Thank you for voting for me. Now I'm going to spend $300 million on a ballroom you'll never get to see." Remember Trump's campaign rallies? Remember Drain the Swamp? Remember how he'd attack wealthy donors and Wall Street elites? Trump is now the swamp, taking money from the same corporations he claimed to oppose, building monuments to excess while working people struggle. The system is still rigged, but now Trump's doing the rigging, the legal questions. And this whole thing is happening while there are serious questions about whether Trump even has legal authority to do this. The National Capital Planning Commission is supposed to oversee major construction on federal property. They're supposed to protect the public interest, but Trump basically ignored them. He demolished the East Wing without going through proper approval. He said demolition doesn't require approval, only construction does. That's just a loophole. That's Trump finding a way around the system. When people complained, when preservationists said, you can't just destroy a historic part of the White House, what did Trump do? He got rid of the architect counseling restraint. He brought in someone who would go along with his vision. He removed anyone who might oppose him. Senator Richard Blumenthal introduced legislation called the No Palaces Act to stop this. He said, it's not Donald Trump's house, it's the people's house. He's right. The White House doesn't belong to Trump. It belongs to all Americans, past, present, and future. But Trump's treating it like his personal property, tearing down historic buildings, building monuments to wealth and excess with money from corporations that have business with his administration. What this really means. Do you think this is what America should be? Do you think a president should be able to reshape the people's house for his own purposes, demolish historic buildings without oversight, take money from corporations in exchange for access? Because this is what's happening, this is what we're allowing. This ballroom project is a symbol. It's corruption made visible, it's excess on display. It's a monument to the idea that the president can do whatever he wants without consequences. Think about what this ballroom represents. It says, wealth and corporate power deserve a palace inside the people's house. It says the presidency is about serving the rich and powerful, not regular Americans. It says historic preservation doesn't matter if it gets in the way of Trump's vision. Every time a corporation writes a check, they're buying access. Every time Trump hosts a dinner there, deals will be made that benefit those companies at the expense of regular Americans. Every time someone sees donor names engraved on the walls, they'll be reminded that in Trump's America, money buys influence. This is the opposite of draining the swamp. This is making the swamp bigger, more luxurious, and more expensive. This is corruption with a crystal chandelier. The precedent. If he's willing to do this to the White House, what else is he willing to do? What other institutions is he willing to reshape? This isn't just about one building. This is about precedent. If Trump can demolish a historic part of the White House without consequences, what stops the next president from doing something similar? If Trump can take hundreds of millions from corporations, Seeking favorable treatment, what stops the next president? We're setting dangerous precedents. We're normalizing behavior that should be unthinkable. We're allowing the presidency to be corrupted in plain sight while we're too exhausted to stop it. The choice. The ballroom will be completed eventually. It will host fancy dinners and exclusive events. Corporate executives will mingle with cabinet members. Deals will be made, policies will be shaped, and regular Americans, the people who actually own the White House, the people whose tax dollars maintain it, the people who elected Trump believing he'd fight for them, will never set foot inside. That's Trump's legacy. A betrayal of the people who believed in him, wrapped in marble and crystal, paid for by corporations, built on the rubble of American history. We have a choice. We can accept this as the new normal. We can shrug and say that's just Trump being Trump. We can make excuses about private funding, or we can demand better. We can insist on accountability. We can refuse to normalize this. We can say clearly that this is not acceptable. That presidents don't get to use their office to benefit themselves and their wealthy friends. That the people's house belongs to the people, not to corporations and billionaires. The ballroom is being built, whether we like it or not. The East Wing is already demolished. The construction is underway. We can't stop that now, but we can refuse to accept the precedent this sets. We can demand reforms. We can support legislation like the No Palaces Act. We can vote for candidates who will hold Trump accountable. We can stay informed and engaged and refuse to look away, because if we don't, if we just accept this and move on, then we're complicit. We're allowing the corruption, we're enabling the betrayal of working Americans, and I don't think that's who we are as Americans. Democracy requires all of us to pay attention and demand accountability. The question is, are we willing to do that?